Okay everyone, video number 4 in lecture 28. This is a short one. We are almost done with part one of photosynthesis. So we're into light reactions still, and we're going to finish it off. So we left off at step 5 in the process, and so we're going on to step 6. Step 6 is the absorption of light by photosystem 1. So we're finished with pumping protons and making ATP. We did all that back here. Now we are going to take that electron that has flowed all the way down to this P700 pigment now, and we're going to excite that again using light. So we have a similar process. Light is absorbed by pigments. Different pigments exist to absorb light of different wavelengths, so that happens in step 6. And that light energy is channeled to the P700 center, electron center, and then that excites an electron. And these are electrons that have come in from the electron transport chain. They're excited once again to a higher energy level. From that higher energy level, electrons flow down another electron transport chain. This one does not pump protons, but it's similar to any other electron transport chain. Electrons flow through electron centers, and they flow to increasing reduction potentials. In this case, they flow to NADP+. And NADP+ reductase is the enzyme that actually takes the electrons and puts them on NADP+ to reduce it to NADPH. We need an extra proton as well, and we have our NADPH. So we have our raw materials for use later in the dark reaction. We have ATP and we have NADPH. So clean and simple. Nice, pretty cool process. So NADP+ is the terminal electron center. Remember, we distinguished it from NADPH. We said it has that phosphate group on it that makes it different structure from NAD+. And NADP is used in anabolic reactions rather than NAD used in catabolic reactions. So the terminal electron acceptor, remember it was oxygen in oxidative phosphorylation. We needed a place to put those electrons that we harvested from food. We put them on oxygen and we made water. In this case, in photosynthesis, we start with water and we harvest electrons from water and eventually put them on NADP. At least eventually in part 1 of photosynthesis, we put them on NADP to make NADPH, and later we will use those to reduce CO2 to make sugar. So we're talking about the difference here, just to finish up, between producers and consumers. Producers, anybody who does photosynthesis, they're known as autotrophs. They're self-feeders. Auto for self, meaning they can make their own energy using the light of the sun. They get carbon, they get energy from CO2. They fix that CO2 using the power of the sun. Consumers like us, we're heterotrophs, other feeders. Hetero for other. So we can't make our own energy. We have to rely on other energy sources. And we rely on sources from the producers who get that energy from the sun. Finally, we've seen this, just a little review, just to make sure you understand well why electron movement can pump protons. So we said an electron moves from A to B through electron centers, for example, in an electron transport chain. So from A to B, an electron moves. So B is reduced when it picks up the electron. It gains a negative charge because the electron is negatively charged. So the proton is conveniently available. Most electron transport chains that we know are dissolved in an aqueous environment or live in an aqueous environment, and so there's a lot of water around. That water is a nice carrier of protons, and protons with water just make the hydronium ion, H3O+, and there's a lot of that around. The protons don't actually run around by themselves. They're actually carried by hydronium ions. But they're everywhere, and they're available then to to neutralize the charge that resulted from B, in this case, being reduced. And so in the second panel here, we see B being reduced by that proton. So we now have a neutral charge in B. We picked up an electron, we picked up a proton. Then when an electron passes from B to C, now we oxidized B and we're reducing C. That proton is no longer needed on B because it now has a positive charge, right? Because the electron left and went to C. And that proton then can be released. And it can be released on the opposite side of the membrane from which it was picked up. And that pumps protons from one side to the other. So the result, protons pass from one side to the other. We've seen that before. That's a little review. Make sure it's real clear. And we're done with part 1 of photosynthesis. So thanks for watching video 4. And we'll see you in lecture 29.